Much of World War II can be traced to the decision made at the end of World War I. Germany was blamed guilty for the war. They became a republic, yet went into a deep depression as a nation, which was not helped by the global financial crash of 1929. Germany's economy then collapsed, and their currency was worthless. That's when Adolf Hitler, an Austrian politician, rose to give the Germans hope. Ever since World War I, the Treaty of Versailles left internal wars unresolved. At that time, communism was strong in Russia. There was a rise of a right-wing movement in Europe called fascism. Fascists felt threatened by communism. Hitler was a fascist and became the leader of the National Socialist Party in Germany. He promised the Germans that they could be the strong and powerful empire they once were and even bigger. In the 1930s, when Hitler was voted into power, he made anti-Semitism politically correct, stating that the Jews cheated the country at the last World War. The Nazi Party created a notion that the German pure race was superior and better than the rest. They started seeking ethnic perfection by ridding themselves of other ethnic minorities, especially the Jews. Germany allied itself with Japan and Italy, which made up the Axis powers. Germany shrunk after World War I, and due to the Treaty of Versailles, they were prohibited from arming the Rhinelands bordering France. Hitler, nevertheless, armed this area again, which triggered the war.
Germany entered into Austria, whom happily joined the Third Reich, then invaded Czechoslovakia, the first mostly non-German speaking country, which alarmed all Europe. France and Britain saw Germany as a serious threat. Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, warned Hitler not to invade Poland. Yet, on the 1st of September 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, forcing Britain to declare war on Germany. The German invasion of Poland was quick, using tactics called blitzkrieg, or lightning warfare, which made deep, quick attacks by tanks and bombers, followed by soldiers to secure the area. Hitler had conquered Poland, Denmark, and Norway by then, before turning west. France and Britain wanted to be one step ahead of Germany, so they moved to Belgium first, but Germany was too swift. The surviving forces had a mass evacuation called Evacuation of Europe Dunkirk. France then surrendered. Later, Germany planned the attack on Britain, but they had superiority in sea and air, forcing the Germans to cancel the invasion, but still managed to bomb the cities of Britain. Ireland remained neutral during the war, but allowed Britain to use its air base. Hitler had an agreement with Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, that he would not invade Russia as long as it remained out of the war. Both men had diverging ideals, so Hitler eventually decided to invade Russia. The first few months were hugely successful for the Germans. They killed and starved millions of Russians. Russia was to lose 20 million people in the war.
It was the winter that doomed the Germans, because they were not ready for the cold, and contrary to the Russians, which were. The United States, although officially neutral, began supplying the Allies with aid and cutting off oil to Japan. Japan had already invaded parts of China before the war and planned to expand across the Pacific. On the 7th of December, 1942, Japan led an attack on the American Navy base Pearl Harbor, causing huge destruction and shock through the U.S. The attack was supposed to prevent the United States from interfering, but Japan had only awoken the sleeping giant, making the United States declare war on Japan, and thus Germany declaring war on the United States. As war started in Europe, Hungarian Jewish scientists had been studying nuclear physics and wanted to warn the American government the potential of the weapons of mass destruction. They feared the Germans had already begun working on it. They warned President Roosevelt of the dangers of the weapon and urged him to build it before the Nazis did. The Allies moved right across North Africa in 1942. By 1943, the Allies approached Italy, but Germany came to their rescue. June 6, 1944, was the D-Day for the Allies. They made a massive landing of troops in Normandy. They fought their way to France and eventually secured their position. Paris had been liberated.
Russia was pushing hard against the Germans. As the Red Army pushed through Poland, they discovered the terrible truth of what the Germans had been doing to the Jews. 6 million Jews were murdered in what became known as the Holocaust. Auschwitz was the most infamous concentration camp became a custom-built death factory. The Allies liberated the survivors. The Yalta Conference, the Allied leaders Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin met to plan for the future of Europe. The Allies closed in on Germany from all sides. Russia reached Berlin first. 30th of April. Hitler shot himself. A week later, the Nazis surrendered. The war in Europe was over. The US was still fighting a war against Japan across the Pacific Ocean. US scientists finished building the atomic bomb. They were planning to use it against Germany, but President Truman chose to use the weapon against Japan and avoid a whole-scale invasion. August the 6th. In 1945, US dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. The Soviet Union then declared war on Japan. Japan did not surrender, so the US dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Days later, Japan surrendered, ending the Second World War. Many Nazis were tried and executed for their war crimes. Germany was occupied and divided into East and West. The map of Europe changed once again.